Be honest. When was the last time you clicked on a podcast with boring cover art? Exactly. Your cover art isn't decoration. It's the billboard for your show. And in my opinion, if it doesn't pop, then nobody is stopping to listen. Your podcast could have the best content in the entire world, but if your cover art looks amateur, people will scroll right past it. Let's fix that. Let's get into it. We're talking all things cover art in today's episode, and this is such a crucial part of your podcast launch or rebranding process. And we're going to dedicate a whole episode to it today. But before we dive in, I want to guide you to my podcast launch blueprint, which you can grab in the episode notes below. The link is right there. And in this blueprint, we dive even deeper on every single thing we're going to talk about in this episode, as well as the 10-part series that I've started doing and am continuing to do the next few weeks to teach you everything that you need to know when it comes to launching your podcast. Even if you have a show that already exists, or maybe one that is dead that you want to bring back to life, you're going to learn something in this entire series, and you're going to learn even more in my podcast launch blueprint. Grab yours at the link in the episode notes below, and let's get into all things cover art. When creating a podcast, cover art isn't always the first thing that people think of. People think a lot about the name of the show, people think about the branding of the show, but not a lot of the times do we think about what is actually going to be on the cover art. The truth of the matter is your cover art is your first impression of your podcast. And here's some sad but true truth. People are going to judge your cover art before they even press play or ever press play on your podcast episodes. In today's podcasting market, your cover art has to stand out. Whether someone's looking on Apple, on Spotify, or another podcasting app, your cover art has to be the thing that stands out amongst everything else. More than anything, platforms are skewing visual first, and people have very, very, very short attention spans. So unless you're giving people exactly what they need to know in the time that they feel like dedicating to it, they're not going to click through and press play. Same goes for your cover art. If it doesn't capture people right off the bat, you're not going to be able to convert them to listen to an episode. If it doesn't look good, people aren't going to click through and want to learn more. It kind of sucks to say this, but people really do judge a book by its cover. And so people are judging what your podcast is about, what it sounds like, what the content is inside it, just by what the branding and what the marketing of the show looks like. So we're going to go into all of the details of what you should do, what you shouldn't do. But before that, I have a little bit more context to give you. Between your show cover art and your YouTube thumbnails, these are all first impressions. So you want to make sure the branding of your show is consistent no matter where people find your podcast. And you want to make sure that your cover art stands out amongst the rest. Your podcast cover art is what sets expectations for quality, tone, and professionalism. It is the differentiator that is either going to make you magnetic or make you invisible. So let's talk a little bit about why having your name and your face on your podcast cover art is way better than a generic logo. Now, everyone has a different opinion when it comes to this, and my belief is that I absolutely love having people's faces on cover art to go with their names. And I'm going to tell you why. There's a whole bunch of people out there who don't think that you need to have this, and that's totally cool too, and we're going to talk about that as well, because there are certain applications and certain times when that type of cover art is most appropriate. But having your logo and just slapping it on there might just feel cool, might feel safe, and it might just feel like, hey, yep, this is the thing, and people are going to know exactly what it is. But here's the reality. Logos do not build trust. People connect with faces and they remember names. When a listener scrolls by, they're not thinking, oh, I really love that logo. I believe in that logo. That looks really cool. They're looking for, do I recognize this person? And does this information that I'm receiving feel human? Putting your face and putting your name on your cover art creates instant recognition, especially if you're trying to build a personal brand. It gives people that trust. It helps to build that authority. It also gives your podcast longevity because people grow with you and grow with your brand, not necessarily with a random symbol that they don't recognize yet. The purpose in having a podcast for a lot of creators is to build that authority, is to build that credibility. So you want to make sure that you're doing that from the start. You want to make sure you're doing that with your cover art that you are creating. This type of cover art works really well with people who are trying to build a personal brand, like I said, coaches, consultants, thought leaders, speakers, service providers, those kinds of industries where you want to have that connection between your face, your name, your voice. Those three factors are really important. Now let's talk a little bit about when not using your face works, because curveball, there are times and there are applications where not using your face is absolutely the right move. This is when the show is bigger than you. Maybe it's a company podcast, maybe it's a narrative storytelling series, maybe it's a multi-host podcast where just having you on the cover art doesn't actually make any sense at all. Think of shows like The Daily. Their power comes from the story that's being told on the podcast and not necessarily one person's face. So here's my rule of thumb. If your show is personality driven, use your face. If it's concept driven, meaning to spotlight an organization, a company, or a community, using something that is a cleaner, bolder design without a headshot can work magnificently. Either way, whatever you choose, you want to make sure that the design feels intentional. You want to make sure that it doesn't feel like you just took 3 words, put them up on the screen, and hoped for the best. Either way, you want to make sure that you're always keeping your design simple, bold, and recognizable, no matter where people find you, no matter what platform they find you on. Let's talk about some mistakes to avoid, because there are so many that I see all the time. The first one is having tiny fonts. Cover art in and of itself is very, very, very small. So you want to make sure that your font is matching how small cover art actually is. Can people read the words on there? That's a really, really, really important piece. Make sure that your font is legible on podcast apps and also on mobile devices. The next thing that I see is too many words. Sometimes we try and get all of the information on there that it actually doesn't make any sense at all when you look at the cover art overall. When things are cluttered and are overwhelming, it's hard for people to scan. So definitely make sure that you make it as clean as possible and as easy as possible for people to read exactly what you are hoping that they're going to gain. I also am a huge fan of avoiding backgrounds that are super busy. It takes away from the main message, it takes away from the main wording, and it gets people lost and confused. I also caution you to avoid styles that are overly trendy. Something like neon or 3D text, that kind of stuff doesn't age well with time. Now, if it's part of your branding, then that makes sense. I always recommend to make your cover art aligned with your branding. Use the same types of fonts and same types of colors that you use in your branding everywhere else. Find those little differentiators and ways that you can make it different without having to change or create a whole new brand for the podcast if you don't want to. Which leads me to my last point, which is that inconsistent branding. If it doesn't match your website or your social visuals, it's not going to fit in with everything else that you're doing. So you need to find pieces that relate the branding back together with everything else that you have going on, whether it's in your business or other marketing assets. My tip for you also is to test your thumbnail. And this is something that I always recommend doing. Take your thumbnail, shrink it down in the size that you would see it on a podcast app, and then also line it up against all of your competitors. How does your cover art look in that lineup? Can people pick it out? Does it stand out, or does it look like the same as everybody else's? Let's go into some examples of good versus bad cover art. So things that you're looking for on the bad side, you're looking for logos that are blurry, title that overlaps, things that are longer than 3 lines, and colors that are clashing. On the good side of a podcast cover art, you're looking for things that are clean headshots, bold and high contrast titles, and 2 to 3 strong colors that are playing off each other. On the side of good design, you're going to have things that are attention grabbing and scroll stopping. And on the side of bad design, you're going to have things that are instantly forgettable, things that are not memorable at all. The listener's decision to click happens in under 3 seconds, and your cover art has to sell the click. Now that we have some examples of good cover art and bad cover art, things to do and things not to do, I'm going to direct you back to my podcast launch blueprint. Please feel free to go ahead and grab your copy of it. The link is in the episode notes below. We dive way deeper in the blueprint and expanding a lot more on what we're talking about here. Now, these are the things that I've seen work across hundreds and hundreds of shows. Client shows that we've launched, shows that we've produced, and shows that we've rebranded and brought back to the market. Now, take this advice however you will. Do with it whatever you will. Please let me know in the comments below if you are going to be changing up your cover art, or if you have any thoughts in relation to this. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please leave me a comment if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're listening on the audio apps, please reach out to me. Send me a message on Instagram. More than happy to chat with you there. My goal with this series is to help you start strong and avoid making all of the mistakes that I've seen and that I've made myself over the years. So again, link to the podcast launch blueprint is in the episode notes below, and I will see you same time, same place next week. Bye for now.